So much that happened over the weekend. We need 4-hour show today, guys. A special 4-hour show.
Are we doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm game.
Are you here? Stephen
Yeah.
A, are you ready for 4 hours or no?
I'm always ready.
Okay, well, then we're going to do 4 hours. Good morning to everyone. I'm Carrie Champion. Welcome to First Take. I am here with Skip Bayless in studio. Stephen A. Smith is in New York City. Good morning, Sass.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you all? How was your weekend?
Stephen A., I only have one thought for you this morning. How about them Cowboys?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
Wait, hold on. Hold on.
That's how excited
You're
I am.
excited.
I can't wait. Can we talk about the Cowboys now?
No, we cannot.
Please?
No,
Please?
that's coming up a little later on in the show. Stephen A., I went to the beach this weekend. Thank you for asking. But I did obviously catch the Cowboys, which we will discuss a little later on in the show. But after another 49ers loss, don't shake your head. Well, San Francisco even make it to the playoffs. Plus, the Eagles get a division win over Washington, but not without several storylines. There was a brawl. You may have saw that. Kerry Williams was talking about practice. And who is the best in the NFC East right now? I don't know if it's the Cowboys, but someone may say that. Let's begin with the Super Bowl rematch. It was the first rematch played the following season that went to overtime. Seahawks get the 26-20 win, snapping the Broncos' 4-game regular season winning streak. The Seahawks drove 80 yards in 13 plays to deny the Broncos possession in overtime, which answered the Broncos' 6-play, 80-yard possession that tied the game at the end of regulation.
You know, to go, 80-something yards with no timeouts under a minute, that's not easy to do against that defense. And so those are things you take from it, that you get in the situation again, hey, we've been here before, we can do it. That's what I try to build off, things like that.
Like I told you before, every game's a championship opportunity. It's another championship caliber team, and we're happy to get the win, you know. Obviously, we'd like to clean some things up and play better, but going into a bye, we can't ask for better.
You seem a little frustrated for a guy who just beat Peyton Manning and the Broncos.
Yeah, we're frustrated about a mistake. It shouldn't have been that close.
All right. Well, Stephen A., here's a question. Definitely wasn't as bad as the Super Bowl, but do you think it was a moral victory of sorts for the Broncos?
I customarily, Skip Bayless, do not believe in moral victories. You either win or you lose or what have you. But in this particular instance, it just proves that there are exceptions to every rule, and I definitely think that's applicable here. The fact of the matter is the Denver Broncos could have folded. They were down 17-3. The Seattle Seahawks were pretty much manhandling them, at least on the defensive side of the ball. It was a replica of what we had seen transpire in the Super Bowl. And so, as a result of that, whether it's the Cam Chancellor interception that ultimately led to a field goal with a little less than a minute left, whether it was them pressuring Peyton Manning, whatever the case may be, their defense was pretty much having their way with the offense of the Denver Broncos. But then all of a sudden, here comes Peyton Manning. You've got a turnover. Ultimately, you pull it within 17-12. They go to 20-12, and then all of a sudden, in less than a minute, you march this team down the field. You connect with Tammy for a 26-yard touchdown pass. You connect with Demaryius Thomas on a 2-point conversion. You tie the game, and in large part because your defense held and was able to hold them out of the end zone and prevent Seattle from really running away with it. I've got to give credit where credit is due. I thought that when you look at, if you're looking at John Elway and you're looking at the acquisition of DeMarcus Ware, of T.J. Ward, of Aqib Talib, who had a tip that led to an interception, by the way, DeMarcus Ware, who had a sack, forcing the safety in the end zone to when they gang tackled Marshawn Lynch as well. I just look at Denver's defense, and I clearly see an upgrade. Got a lot of heart. They responded to the challenge. They didn't fold. And it was the kind of game, to be quite honest with you, that we expected in the Super Bowl. So I definitely think that when you look at Elway and the Denver Broncos organization, they made the necessary upgrades. Of course, they lost the game. Of course, they were manhandled for pretty much 3.5 quarters. I'm talking about Denver's offense. And Denver's defense obviously didn't hold Seattle in overtime because they marched right downfield. But credit Russell Westbrook and his continued elevation taking place before our eyes for a lot of credit as it pertains to that. But in the end, I'm just happy that we had a game, and I definitely think if there is such a thing as moral victories, we witnessed it yesterday for Denver.
So you're going to give the Denver Broncos a moral victory off that game yesterday?
Yes.
I can't even begin to do that. I am sorry. I'm with Richard Sherman. That game shouldn't have been that close. I'm very happy for the viewing audience that we got that game as opposed to what we got in the Super Bowl. And I wish that game had been the Super Bowl, because that would have been an all-time great finish to a Super Bowl. But, Stephen A., you and I have been covering sports for a long time. early in my career, I used to believe in moral victories. And I've covered too many coaches who convince me they're just a loser's lament. Look at the scoreboard, who won and who lost, and that's the ultimate takeaway, especially when we're talking about the greatest regular season quarterback in the history of the National Football League in Peyton Manning. I did not give my Cowboys a moral victory last year when they played Peyton to 51-48 and lost on a late Romo interception, even though Tony Romo threw for 506. I did. If ever I've seen a moral victory over the last, let's say, 10 years, it was your Giants. Remember the last regular season game of 07 when they proved to themselves they could hang with Brady and Randy Moss in that game, which set up the Super Bowl victory over Brady and Randy Moss, unfortunately. Maybe that's a moral victory, or maybe it's just figuring out how to play against somebody that was the biggest offensive juggernaut in the National Football League history. But in this case, this was a 17-3 game at halftime, and I thought it was going to be a blowout. And I didn't think it was so much what the Denver defense did in the second half, it's what the Seattle offense failed to do. They had 103 total yards in the second half, and I'm not being a hypocrite. I tweeted about this. In one drive, they targeted Brian Walters 4 times. In one drive, Brian Walters, an undrafted free agent from Cornell, who, you know, returns punts just because Earl Thomas is a little too dangerous back there. But what are you doing? You have Percy Harvin. You have Kurse. You have Doug Baldwin. What are you doing throwing to Brian Walters? That's what it degenerated to in the second half. It looked like they were just trying to run out the clock, a lot of Marshawn, and all of a sudden we had a game capped off by 2 masterpiece drives. Two of the greatest drives you will ever see under these circumstances of a Super Bowl rematch. We had Peyton Manning, Big Peyton, doing big things in 59 seconds with no timeouts to score the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. And then in overtime, we had Little Russell doing a whole lot of little things to go 80 yards in 13 plays. They were beautiful drives to watch for very different reasons. They went at it completely differently. But in the end, if I'm looking at strength of team, Seattle's just still way better, I think, than the Denver Broncos. And I thought Seattle got way too conservative in the second half. If they'd kept their pedal to the metal, I think it would have been a blowout because it teetered on that in the third quarter.
Well, the thing about it is, I get where you're coming from, Skip, but when I look at a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, 11 receptions, 149 yards, who is clearly more of a significant threat than an Eric Decker, I think that's a plus. I think when you look at Wes Welker returning for the first time, having 6 receptions, a relatively pedestrian 60 yards, but we understand where that's coming from. There's a downgrade from Noshawn Moreno to Monty Ball at the running back position. We understand that. Peyton Manning had some pressure, but was still a bit better protected than we saw him be protected in the Super Bowl. I think the combination of things, you can take nuggets of information, peel it from the game, and say to yourself, if these two teams met again, what kind of a matchup could it be? And I think that's where I'm going with it. I certainly believe that the Seattle Seahawks are still a better team, but when you look at the way Denver responded to the challenge, how they didn't fold like cheap tents, being in hostile confines in Seattle with that noise and everything else, but still being able to tie this game and force it into overtime, you see some of the lapses in Seattle's defense. I don't believe that Seattle's the same team they were last year. I do believe they're still the best, but I don't believe they're as head and shoulders above everybody as they were a year ago because of the absence of depth. They lost a couple of key ingredients to Jacksonville. They don't have depth on the defensive line the way that they once did. There were some lapses in the secondary. We also saw Peyton Manning go at Richard Sherman a couple of times. We saw Demaryius Thomas catch that 2-point conversion on Richard Sherman. We look at it from that perspective, and we see some of the things taking place. Of course, Richard Sherman is still elite as far as I'm concerned, had an exceptional game. We look at their defense, however, look at K.J. Wright losing Tammy in coverage, which is what led to the touchdown to bring them within 20-18. Some of these things that you're seeing right now, it gives you the impression that people are sort of feeling or figuring Seattle out just a little bit. Not to a degree where it makes you better than them, but if a game is close, they can be had. The combination of losing to San Diego just a week earlier, having attitude, being on their home turf for a game that's a rematch of the Super Bowl with the crowd as hyped as ever before, along with all of those things working to your advantage, and still you find yourself being pushed into overtime because holes were discovered in your defense, and offensively there was a lapse. I look at it as just looking at it and saying, this is a team that could be had. Doesn't mean you're better than them. But on any given Sunday, who knows what could happen? Denver, more than anybody else, needed that to occur, because when you get punked and beat down and stomped on the way that they did in the Super Bowl, you crawl before you walk. And I saw yesterday as one of those crawling situations.
You left out bum rush. you have a good string of
adjectives to describe it.
Right.
Yeah, I forgot.
What happened? Predicate adjectives, actually.
Yeah.
I'm being a real English student.
Yeah, yes, let us know.
The point is, if you're Peyton Manning, and this game means this much to you, which I believe it did, then your team and you have to play an almost flawless game to have a chance to win. I think they sort of backed into a chance to win, but when you look at the big picture, Monte Ball, you cannot fumble on the opening drive. You're just going to be in trouble if you do. And Peyton Manning cannot miss Julius Thomas in the end zone on that little slant. That has to be 7 points. And then Peyton Manning cannot throw that interception that Cam picked off, Cam Chancellor, with 2:25 left in the game. Now, he canceled it out with that last drive, which was all-time. In fact, it's as great a drive in the regular season as Peyton's ever had in his career, to go 80 yards in 59 seconds.
But Skip, Monty Ball is one thing. But let's pump the brakes just a second here and recognize that we're talking about the great Peyton Manning. Yes, he missed Julius Thomas in the end zone. Yes, he threw that interception to Cam Chancellor. We also have to recognize that this is only the second time the Denver Broncos have failed to score a touchdown in the first half in the Peyton Manning era. So we understand that the things that you're pointing out are aberrations. They happen. They can't happen if you're trying to win a championship, but at the same time, they ultimately do happen most of the time to most people. And all I'm saying to you is that if we have to bet, if you have to put your money on this, Skip, are you going to sit there and say Peyton Manning will miss Julius Thomas again, or he'll throw that interception to Cam Chancellor in the same exact identical scenario again? Come on now. This is Peyton Manning.
Maybe.
And that's why I'm talking about, again, they didn't win the game. They didn't win the game.
Okay.
But at the same time, if I'm thinking about you creeping up on somebody, this is how you go about doing it. This is their Achilles heel for the moment.
Okay, maybe I would think that Peyton would do those things again at Seattle. It's the hardest place to play, I think, in all of sports. So, yeah, I thought overall Peyton played okay, played pretty well, and it looked better than it was because of the last drive. But he just played okay to me in the big picture.
Just okay.
The Super Bowl won't be played in Seattle.
Well, that's true.
It'll be in a neutral turf. It won't be in Seattle.
Yeah, and my last quick point about the Denver defense.
Yes, darling.
When it was time, Russell Wilson picked it to pieces. That's just the fact.
Russell Wilson becomes the 4th quarterback in NFL history to win 17 of his first 18 home starts, according to Elias. That kid is really something special.
He is.
On his way to being a great.
We'll talk about him more later.
I know. The Eagles are 3-0 for the first time since 2004 when they won the NFC Championship. And the Eagles became the first team in history to win its first 3 games after trailing in each by 10 or more points. As expected, it was a heated division matchup that included a brawl and Deshaun Jackson's return to face his old team. Foles was 27 of 41, 325 yards, 3 TDs. Stephen A., you watched the game. What did the Eagles prove?
The whole game.
The whole game. It was good, right? What did they prove with that win?
That's a tough one right there. When you talk about what they proved, they're 3-0. Do I consider them a team that's worthy of being undefeated? I guess you could say yes, because they are. But what they've done defensively in the first half of each game is highly questionable, which is something we'll get into later because of Kerry Williams' comments about his coach, Chip Kelly. But in the end, their offense is high-powered. You see with Skip's boy from Vanderbilt, Matthews, a rookie with 2 touchdown catches.
I told you in the preseason.
Preseason what?
I said, beware.
Yes, you did.
He's coming.
Yes,
Jordan Matthews, beware.
Yes, he did. He did. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. That's why I gave you
Thank
credit.
You.
No one need to interrupt me to remind you when I'm trying to give you credit. But my point to you is that Macklin is back. He was out last year. He reminded everybody why he's back. He had a big-time game. Nick Foles had a big-time game and showed a level of toughness that we didn't know he had. They did this without being able to run the football effectively with Shady McCoy, not just because he got a little concussed, but also their offensive line. Injuries personified. 4 guys playing different positions on the offensive line. So obviously, there were some protection issues. There was some issues in terms of creating some holes to run the football. But still in all, they managed to get it done through special teams, through exploiting the Redskins' special teams, through also making sure to prove that as good as Kirk Cousins is, there's a reason he wasn't designated to start it. There's a reason that Skip Bayless has had his questions about Kirk Cousins, because when it was really, really time on the last 2 drives, he couldn't get it done. It's just that simple. And so for me, I look at the Philadelphia Eagles. I picked them to win the NFC East. And what they've proven to me is that they're the best team in the NFC East. That's what I see. But that's not saying a lot, to be quite honest with you. But they are impressive offensively. Their defense is highly suspect.
You don't seem all that impressed with your Philadelphia Eagles.
I never said I was. I just said they would be the best in the NFC East.
Here come those Cowboys. We'll talk about that later.
Come on.
Back to this game.
We're not even
Back
there
to
yet.
this game.
Good grief.
This game boiled down to me with the point that you made near the end of your opening soliloquy. When it counts, Nick Foles is better and always will be better, I believe, than Kirk Cousins was yesterday when it counted in the fourth quarter. Kirk Cousins made some sweet throws yesterday, some sweet deep balls, one to Deron for a touchdown. Kirk Cousins threw for 102 more yards than Nick Foles for the game. That's 427 to 325. But you know what my favorite quarterback stat is? QBR. Scale of 0 to 100 in the fourth quarter. Nick Foles had a 91 on a scale of 100. Kirk Cousins in the fourth quarter, QBR 12. Why was that? Because on Kirk Cousins' first 3 possessions, remember it's 27 all. Third down in the first possession, misfire, poor pass. Third down, next possession, misfire, poor pass. And in the next possession, first down, misfire, really bad idea, interception. All of a sudden, it's 37 to 27, Philadelphia. Now the pressure's off, and Kirk Cousins led a terrific touchdown drive. Now you're back in the game. Now you got a chance to win the game. You get the ball back late in the game, and you have 3 straight misfires. I'm sorry, Kirk Cousins. He's a really he is one of the he might be the best backup quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
But long-term starter, franchise quarterback, no. Will he be there when you really, really need him? No. Am I really, really sold on the Philadelphia Eagles? I am not. I agree with you. Nick Foles showed incredible toughness yesterday. Took a lot of shots, one of them a cheap shot that we're about to talk about, and kept getting up and firing clutch throws. But in the end, Philly's defense gave up 511 yards, and I'm supposed to say wow to that? And remember, Washington did lose in the second half, D'Angelo Hall, so I can't really say that it was great what they did to Washington's defense without D'Angelo. And boy, it sounded like he's got an Achilles issue that could shelve him for the rest of the year. But in the end, Stephen A., I don't know, not that big a deal to me, except that Nick Foles is a tough guy. That's what it proved.
Well, first of all, it was a great game. There's no doubt about that. It was a great game, and we wanted to see something from Cousins, and he came out there and he was balling. There's no denying that. It's just that when it counted most, the Eagles' defense was able to neutralize them. Some throws were bad. Some throws were off target.
They were.
He just didn't seem to be the Kirk Cousins that existed for the first 3.5 quarters, which really exemplifies the difference between him and RG3.
Yep.
Because RG3 always gives you the impression that he will respond in the big moments. It's the other moments where you're wondering what he's going to give you. But during the big moments, you do expect more from RG3. You don't necessarily necessarily expect much from Kirk Cousins. When I look at the Eagles again, their defense has been highly suspect. We know that. But I think that my boy Malcolm Jenkins was balling.
He was good yesterday.
I thought he had some good plays yesterday. He showed up. He showed up big time yesterday, no doubt about that. But the Eagles' defense is suspect, to say the least. They've been outscored 58-24 in the first half of these games. And again, we'll debate later why that is. But in the end, that offense is high-powered. Macklin is no joke. You got Selleck and Ertz at the tight end. You've got Riley Cooper, who's out there, didn't have a big game, didn't need to. Darren Sproles had an uncharacteristic fumble. We can't expect that from him customarily because we know better. And so when I look at the Eagles, they're just loaded with weapons right now. And I think offensively, because they're always in the game and because they have such a high-powered offense, it influences how other people play offensively against them. A lot of times you might want to go for the big play or whatever, but sometimes you might have coaches that are more interested in ball control, Skip, simply because they want to keep the ball away from the Eagles' offense. You don't know what kind of contagious effect their offensive firepower is having on defenses, on opposing offenses, for crying out loud, simply because they want to keep that offense off the field for their respective defenses. So I'm paying attention to all of that, and I'm saying without these guys, down Evan Mathis, down Allen Barbie, down Lane Johnson, down Matt Tobin, still in all, you go out there with Shady McCoy not being able to do what he's capable of doing and still finding a way to win this game knowing that you are not going to be able to run the ball so much. I think that speaks a lot for the Philadelphia Eagles right now. I'm going to give credit where credit is due.
All right, Stephen A., so let's talk about that brawl that happened about 9 minutes and 55 seconds in yesterday at the game. If we could show that.
Yep.
So Redskins, Chris Baker gives Nick Foles a tough shoulder. You see that right there? So look at that. Everyone, after he hit him, everyone's debating on whether or not that was a cheap shot or was the play still live, because I believe Baker thought the play was still live and he could hit Foles. Skip, your reaction to that play, was it a cheap shot or not?
Not only was it a cheap shot to me, Stephen A., but it was an illegal play, and he did get flagged for it. The rule says that it is now a foul if a player initiates any unnecessary contact against a player in a defenseless posture, which includes a quarterback after a possession change. In the old days, I used to think, and they used to teach the quarterback, head on a swivel after an interception, be looking, protect yourself, try to stay out of harm's way. But now the rule protects the quarterback. So, again, should Nick Foles have been a little more wary of where he was? Maybe, but in this case, cheap shot, and it's just a foul. So I'm sorry, Chris Baker was double out of line.
I completely and totally disagree with you. A matter of fact, I'm applauding Baker for the hit. Didn't bother me at all. I actually loved it. Now, I didn't want Nick Foles to get hurt and to be knocked out of the game, which I was worried about when he was writhing on the turf. But at the same time, again, it amazes me how these guys who are grown men have been taught since Pop Warner to play football a certain way, and then all of a sudden the honchos in their suits in the league office want to infiltrate the proceedings and say, oh no, what you've learned all your life no longer applies, and we're going to get rid of that. Nick Foles was not on the other side of the field. Nick Foles was running towards the action, jogging towards the action, knowing you're a quarterback, especially as protected as you are these days. If anything, these guys want to hit the quarterback even more now than they ever did in the past because of how pampered and protected quarterbacks are in this day and age. So knowing this stuff, you're going to jog and lollygag towards the action on a football field with grown men like you don't have anything to worry about? Shame on Nick Foles. I bet you he won't make that mistake again. When you're the quarterback, what you need to do is either stay on the turf or run downfield the opposite direction on the other side of the field away from the action. Because I got news for you. If you're running any way towards the action, which Nick Foles did, and he was about 10 yards away from it, okay, running towards it, you know what? You got what you deserve. If I was, Baker is absolutely right. It's what he's been taught. That's a football play. And if you talk to football players, they'll talk about the letter of the law. Oh, my goodness, you can't do this today because they just changed. Well, you know what? It's taking them a little time to adjust, okay? That's the way it goes. Nick Foles should have known better. He deserved to get popped. I'm happy he's not hurt. But this is football, baby. The quarterbacks are pampered enough. He deserved to get popped silly. I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Do you think Chris Baker knew it was Nick Foles? He said he didn't. He said he didn't even know it was the quarterback.
I don't believe that. No, I think he's lying about that. I think he knew it was Nick Foles.
You know what?
I think he knew it was Nick Foles. So what?
You know, it takes a real man to hit a quarterback like that in a defenseless posture. Nick Foles' head is looking the other way. Boy, it took a lot of guts. And you know what? I'm glad you're applauding that play, because I thought that play was actually a momentum turning point play in the game for the Eagles. It seemed to really jumpstart them. It seemed to really motivate them.
Didn't bother me.
Yeah. Well, it showed you the character of one team versus the lack of character of the other team. Way to go, Chris Baker.
Character. Is that what we're doing? Is that where we're going, character? Really? Really?
Yeah.
The man been taught football like this all his life.
Yeah.
And because some honchos on Park Avenue decided to change the rule at the last minute, he's supposed to apply. It takes time to adapt. It takes time. The quarterback's protected and pampered enough.
The Cowboys erased a 21-point deficit to defeat the Rams 34-31. That ties the biggest comeback win in Cowboys history, set in 1984 against the Saints and matched in 1999 against the Redskins. Tony Romo now has the most fourth-quarter comebacks of any quarterback since 2006 when he became a starter. Des Bryant said after the game they didn't blink once, meaning they were extremely confident. So Des was confident. Romo was poised, shall we say. Stephen A., what do you have to say about the win?
Oh, please. I mean, what do you want me to say? Let me tell you something right now. First of all, Des Bryant needs to stop lying to the American public. We didn't blink. It certainly didn't look like that on the sidelines when they were bickering amongst one another like the dysfunctional, delusional bunch they are.
They were just
but
firing
I'll
each
give
other
credit
up.
where credit is due. The Dallas Cowboys came back. And from a 21-0 deficit after a pick six by Tony Romo with about 6 minutes left in the second quarter, Janoris Jenkins, I think that's who it was, pick sixed them and returned it for a touchdown, obviously, putting them down 21-0. But give Dallas credit where credit is due. More so Scott Linehan, Skip, than anybody else. Being down 21-0, the man didn't panic. He didn't resort to Tony Romo stepping back in the pocket and flinging the football. He stuck with the running game, gave the ball to Murray, DeMarco Murray, 24 carries, 100 yards, stuck with the running game, made sure you allowed them to continue to be versatile. And Tony Romo made a lot of big plays. You know, he scrambled in the pocket, literally scrambling for first downs, got down after getting first downs, didn't take unnecessary hits, hooked up with Des Bryant for his touchdown pass with a blown coverage taking place in St. Louis. St. Louis doesn't appear to be a very good team because obviously they have no quarterback whatsoever. That's really what this comes down to. The Dallas Cowboys beat a team with a third-string quarterback, and the only reason why this is a story is because they found themselves down 21-0. Instead of coming out doing what they were supposed to do from opening tap, they procrastinated a bit before getting their act together. But that's about all. Dallas beating Tennessee, now beating St. Louis with a third-string quarterback. La-di-da, whip-de-doo, so what? We'll see as the season progresses. I'm not getting caught up in all of this Cowboys hoopla, please.
Hoopla. He doesn't care about it.
You finished? Because I'm about to start.
Yes, I am.
What you witnessed yesterday, though you probably weren't watching, was the most significant Dallas Cowboys win since 2009, the last year they made the playoffs. That team yesterday showed me some backbone that none of the previous 5 years of Cowboys have shown ever. Because those teams knew if they got down 21-0 on the road, they just throw in the towel because they were not going to be held accountable by Jason Garrett or Jerry Jones or anybody else in that locker room. This team has some true character. This team started off, as usual, with DeFumble Murray. DeFumble, that's what I'm calling him. That's 3 straight games, DeFumble Murray, that you have coughed it up on the opening drive and said, here, put us in a hole. And then my man, Tony Romo, throws the pick six you referred to, and all of a sudden I look up and it's 21-0, and it was hard to watch. So to unjinx the game, of course, I actually put it down on the lower part of the screen, and I turned the sound. I kept the sound up, but I didn't watch the game.
So
I just listened to the game.
So that's how they came back.
That's how they started coming back.
Okay.
But here's the point, Stephen A. When it was time to make plays early in the fourth quarter, Tony Romo was clutch. You mentioned the first play. It's 3rd and 13 at the 16. They're in big trouble, and Tony Romo started to look a little healthy to me because he escapes, as we can just see here, up the middle. He makes Alec Ogletree completely whiff, and he gets the first down. And then right after that, it becomes 3rd and 14 at the 25, and he throws an absolute laser to Terrence Williams for the first down. Then they get the big pass eye, and then he hits Terrence Williams again for the touchdown, and it's 27-24. And remember, my defense yesterday did not have its best defensive player in the first 2 games, Rolando McClain. Could not go. Justin Durant, another starting linebacker, could not go. And Skandrick, in the end, was taken out of the game. I don't know what his status. What's that?
He's a 3rd-string quarterback. What you need them for?
Because he's torching what's left of my defense. And what happened in the last series of the game? Mo Claiborne, who had been torched the whole game by the 3rd-string quarterback, who's pretty good, by the way, Austin Davis. Mo Claiborne finally made a big play. Yeah, he's better than that. He should be real all right because he was a high pick in the draft that they traded up for. Mo Claiborne making a play is huge for the defense's confidence, for his. And if this defense starts getting healthy, Stephen A., this team is going to be a real threat to Philadelphia in this division, as predicted here. Thank you very much.
As predicted where? Here on First Take?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right here.
Right here on First Take.
Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless. It's amazing. It's amazing. Skip Bayless, I'm the one wearing glasses. You sure you don't need them? I'm watching Tony Romo drop back to pass. You got gaps as wide as Broadway on a Sunday morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, there was nobody in the vicinity. What are you talking about? He zipped the pass to Terrence Williams and all. Who was near James? I mean, Des Bryant didn't have the defenders for St. Louis were in Dallas. They were nowhere to be found. Blown coverages all over the place. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? There was nobody in the vicinity. St. Louis had lapses all over the place. What are you talking about zipping passes? Look at how wide open Des Bryant is. He stood back. Skip.
You know what?
He caught the pass, Skip, and before he caught the pass, he picked up the phone and called and said, "Watch me catch this touchdown pass." That's how much time he had. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
We had a long conversation about it. I said, "You got to grow up and catch this ball."
I mean, Skip, there was nobody near him. There was no one near him, Skip.
You know what?
Tony Romo zip passes, and he dropped it. And look at Tony Romo, and he jukes Ogletree. All right, Ed?
He was healthy.
You know what? Yesterday, the Dallas Cowboys, listen to this.
Unbelievable.
Yesterday, the Dallas Cowboys were an accident waiting to unhappen. They unhappened. They unaccidented yesterday. Am I right?
Okay.
Am I right?
Stephen A,
how many Cowboy teams would have folded tents down 21-0 on the road? Everyone back to 2009.
I give you that.
See?
I give you that because it's the greatest comeback. Was it since 1984 for them?
No.
But it's the Cowboys that we're talking about. All right, so they're not an accident. They're not the accident going up against a 3rd-string quarterback in his 2nd year in the league out of Southern Mississippi.
Last week.
Oh, you know what, Skip? I'm so touched.
Good.
I am so touched. Listen. I'm not saying he's a scrub, but what I'm saying to you is he's still a 3rd stringer. On top of it all, with Romo, you calling up plays and telling us to go to video. There was nobody in the vicinity.
You said gaps as wide as Broadway. No coverage.
Well, that's
blown coverage.
Empty Broadway. An empty Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. Gaps as wide as Broadway. I live on Broadway. I should know.
Well, that's because I've been up on a Sunday. When sports reporters used to be on Sunday mornings, it was early in the morning. There was nobody on the streets.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the bottom line. This was the greatest comeback statistically in Cowboy history because the two previous from 21 down comebacks took overtime to win the game. This didn't even take overtime. This Cowboy team is legit.
I'm so touched.
Yeah.
They did it against St. Louis without a quarterback. I'm so touched.
You know
Stephen
what?
A.
They're coming.
So, Stephen, you still feel like the Eagles are the best in the NFC East, correct? Not the Cowboys. You have a chance. The Eagles are the best in the NFC East, right? So you have a chance to go with the Cowboys right now if you want. No?
Are you crazy?
No.
Are you crazy? I'm not going with no Cowboys. Please.
Cowboys have the Eagles' number out of both times last year.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait, 17-3 at Philadelphia? Nick Foles scored 3 against Dallas last year?
They'll win one of the games this year. The division rivals. It'll happen. So what? Dallas still ain't going to the playoffs. Still ain't going.
No, they're just going to the top of the division.
Oh, boy. I love these conversations. Bayless.
Yes.
You just posted a column on ESPN.com this morning on one Jay Cutler. Is it called The Year of the Commodore?
No, it's not.
What it's about? Tell us.
You will be shocked. It is a scathing psychological breakdown of Jay Cutler's career from a guy, me, who has supported this man, as Stephen A. will attest, for 10 years sitting in his seat on this show since Jay Cutler was a junior at Vanderbilt University. I have called him out, and we will see how he responds starting tonight.
It's up on ESPN.com right now if you guys want to take a look. Let's move on. Look at Stephen A.'s face. What's going on, Stephen A.?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
You mean to tell me that you've been sitting up here these last several weeks hoodwinking me, supporting Jay Cutler, your Vanderbilt guy, when all along you were plotting this column to dissect and pick him apart?
Did I pick the Bears to make the playoffs? I did not. Was I scathing on this show about Jay Cutler's opening day, whatever that performance was against Buffalo at home? I was scathing on this show. I did not buy what he did last week in the fourth quarter or the third and fourth quarter against the 49ers, which is why we're about to talk about the 49ers on this show. I thought that was more about them than about him.
They have the bad second halves, unlike the Eagles. We'll talk about that in a little later coming up in the show. Detroit went into yesterday's game against the Packers with a banged-up secondary. It turned out not to be an issue at all, though. Don Carey returned an Eddie Lacy fumble for a touchdown, while the Lions held Green Bay to 223 yards of offense and sacked that bad man twice in the 19-7 loss.
What's it mean to beat them today? It means a lot. Divisional games are always important. The biggest thing we talked about is getting off to the right start in our division. We're going to see this team last game of the season. I'm sure it's going to have a big meaning, and we just wanted to dominate and get started on the right foot. Hopefully, this game kind of sets the tone for the rest of the division. Obviously, we set out every year to win a division. This is a good start for us.
All right. It's a good start for them. Their defense was awesome, so says Reggie Bush. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. How concerned are you for them, Stephen A.?
I'm incredibly concerned. Skip Bayless, the bad man that he is, has appeared to be anything but. He hasn't been too impressive, to say the least. Yesterday, just 162 yards passing, a relatively pedestrian performance, albeit the front four for the Detroit Lions were suffocating them. They were in his face all day long. They were making things incredibly inconvenient for him, and they knew that they had to because Detroit's secondary was decimated, and the only way they were going to neutralize Green Bay was to make sure they got constant pressure on Aaron Rodgers all day long. But Starks and Eddie Lacy combining for 74 yards rushing on 19 carries did not help matters. Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb and the crew being relatively neutralized. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers' protection had something to do with it. But I call him the bad man, not just because of that rifle arm of his, that pinpoint passing that he's able to exhibit, but also his athleticism, his ability to be evasive and scramble out of the pocket and make plays, whether it be with his legs, literally running, or scrambling out of the pocket and creating time so receivers could get open. I'm not seeing that Aaron Rodgers in 2 of the first 3 games of this NFL season. They seem incredibly unimpressive. And for the defense to force 3 turnovers and to hold Detroit's high-powered offense to just 10 points, but somehow, some way, Green Bay still can't find a way to win this game. I'm going to put most of that onus right where it belongs, on Aaron Rodgers and Coach Mike McCarthy. They don't seem to be clicking right now. Something's awry, something's amiss. Guys that know far more about football than me, the aficionados I'm talking about, can dissect it a hell of a lot better than I'll even try to. But in the end, I'm not liking what I'm seeing, and I watched this game yesterday as well. I'm not impressed at all.
Wow. You know, I'm so with you, I can't even joke about this anymore. Because the bad man that is Aaron Rodgers was once again just bad yesterday, by his standards. He was great late against the Jets. But this is Aaron Rodgers against a division opponent in a dome he has owned in the past. And that's all you got? And I just don't get it. I don't. Was he under duress much of the day? Yeah, he was. Then I think sometimes he looks too much to Jordy Nelson, who's obviously a sensational receiver. But then I look at the targets. Jordy had 7 targets, but Cobb had 6. Corliss had 5. I don't know. I don't think he's completely going Jordy Nelson crazy here. As you point out, they really couldn't run the ball much. I mean, it's not bad to have 76 yards. It's not 26 yards, like a lot of teams wound up with
combined
yesterday. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But it's not terrible. But remember, Detroit even gave them the football.
Yeah.
Green Bay won the turnover battle 3-1. So here. Matt Stafford fumbled down near the goal line. I'm saying, what are you doing? You got him on the ropes and you let him back, give him some new life, and they couldn't take advantage. And Aaron Rodgers was just mostly off all day. So I don't know. How do you explain this, Stephen A? Is he in a slump? Is he distracted? Is he not healthy? I don't know.
Seems a bit distracted. Doesn't seem to be himself. You listen to guys that cover the NFL, they'll tell you that Mike McCarthy is not too hard to figure out. I don't know if that's fair to McCarthy. The man is a good coach. He's proven to be a good coach. He's a Super Bowl championship coach. I think he deserves all of our respect. But at the same time, when you look at Aaron Rodgers and the regression that appears to be taking place, if he's healthy and the skill set is there, but something's not happening, could it be injuries? Could it be that the offensive line is highly suspect?
Maybe.
Because it's not just that he's not throwing the football effectively. They're not running the football effectively, and I have no choice but to at least think about the offensive line under those circumstances, because usually when your offensive line is right and tight, one of those things are working for you. You're either running the football effectively or throwing the football effectively. When you're not doing either particularly well, then I have to look at the level of protection that guys are getting and say, well, that would make sense. But still in all, regardless of the circumstances, I expect more from Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I do too.
This is the first time that the Detroit Lions haven't been able to beat a fully healthy Aaron Rodgers.
That's right.
In uniform.
Yep.
This is the first time they've been able to beat him. That speaks volumes to me. He's found a way in the past. He's not finding a way now.
The only small break I will try to give him is that Detroit yesterday was 11 of 16 on third downs, which allowed them to keep the ball for 38 minutes to the bad man's 22 minutes. So maybe he didn't have the ball enough. But look, in the end, Detroit's going to do this to a lot of people this year. Unfortunately, they're going to do it to themselves too much, too, because we know what happened last week. They went to Carolina and laid an egg against a Panthers team. They got dominated last night at home by Pittsburgh. So we both had Detroit. You've got them as a wild card, right? Because I do. I had them as a wild card.
Yes.
So, again, is there any shame in losing to Detroit in Detroit?
Nope.
No, not hugely, but I expected more from Aaron Rodgers.
All right. Stephen A. on Aaron Rodgers. He's found a way in the past, but he's not finding a way now, and he is incredibly concerned. We leave it there. Arizona backup quarterback does it again. Drew Stanton and the Cardinals beat the 49ers 23-14. Arizona snapped a 4-game losing streak against the 49ers. San Francisco has been outscored by opponents 52-3 in the second halves. Arizona leads the division while 49ers and the Rams are tied for last place. Begs the question, Stephen A., will the 49ers even make it to the playoffs the way they're playing?
The way they're playing, no. I mean, you can't rule them out because of the San Francisco 49ers. They're exceptionally well coached. They have some talent on their squad. We know Kaepernick's a playmaker. You got Stevie Johnson. You've got Vernon Davis. You got Crabtree and the crew. You got Frank Gore. You got a defense where the guys are expected to be back. Aldon Smith, he might be back this season. Navarro Bowman's expected to be back. We don't know what's going to happen with McDonald, obviously, but when you look at some of the pieces that they have, you expect their defense to amp it up to another level, not get outscored 17-0 in the second half. And that's just not something that you should count on if you're a fan of the San Francisco 49ers. I believe the possibility is there for them to step up, but I got to tell you, Skip, I'm just not enamored with their offense right now. They just don't seem to have it. They're like Green Bay West, for crying out loud. They don't seem to have it offensively. Colin Kaepernick doesn't seem to be on his A game, trying to make things happen, but a lot of times he's evading pressure because people are getting pressure on him. The offensive line for San Fran doesn't seem as stout as it customarily is, and their receivers, even though they have talent, you're looking for the reliable playmakers, the people that you can go to and say, they're going to take us there. They're going to be just fine. Everything's going to be all right. You don't see that from this squad right now. As for Arizona, it just seems like it's their time, Skip. Stanton comes in there. He connects with this rookie Brown out of Pittsburgh State, and I think it's Kansas. This kid is impressive.
Kansas.
Got a lot of heart, got a lot of skill. Plus he's miniature, and you can't find him half the damn time because he's so short you can't see him. But I got to tell you that he's out on that football field and he's making things happen. So with all of that being said, and the way their defense is capable of playing with Peterson and Cromartie back there at the corners, Arizona just seems to me to be a better team. It just seems to be their time. And unless we're going to assume that 3 teams from the NFC West are going to go to the postseason, one of them is going to have to be out. And right now it looks like it's going to be San Francisco and not Arizona, because Arizona just looks to be better. And apparently it seems like the distractions have finally caught up to San Francisco because they don't seem to be the same bunch.
Before the season, I said San Francisco would not make the playoffs because something is missing on offense. We saw it all through the preseason, and it continues. I picked Arizona on Friday to win this game, and I said because something is missing on offense. So now, as Kerry pointed out to start this topic, Colin Kaepernick's offense got outscored 14-0 at Dallas in the second half, 21-3 by Jay Cutler, and all 21 came in the fourth quarter, 17-0 in the second half yesterday against Drew Stanton. What's missing? A bunch of players are missing on defense. We know that. Vernon Davis was missing on offense yesterday. But Colin Kaepernick got his money, and he hasn't been money in the second half. Too many misfires, too many undisciplined penalties, which are so uncharacteristic of a Jim Harbaugh coached outfit. They had 8 more penalties in the second half yesterday. Colin Kaepernick completed a lot of passes in the second half, 15 out of 19, but the team was 1 out of 5 on third down because he wasn't making his third down plays. So, bottom line, something's wrong. And when the great Anquan Bolden, who 2 years ago took over the playoffs, sat in that locker room after the game and blamed it on the referees. What? That's a loser's lament. I'm sorry. I'm not buying it, Anquan. It's beneath your dignity. It's beneath this team's dignity. I know you're all frustrated. I know you feel like you're missing too many pieces, but still, Colin Kaepernick has to be better than that. These games are beneath his dignity as a quarterback. We've seen him be better, and because he's not better, they're in big trouble, man, at 1-2.
They're in big trouble. No question about it. I can't add anything to that, Skip. I'm not impressed with what I'm seeing. And again, I think these are the kind of moments where validity gets attached to those who say distractions can take down a team. I mean, the whole McDonald's situation and 49ers are not addressing it, constantly being asked those questions in the heart of the firestorm involving all of this stuff. I think that plays a role. The injuries, the distraction Aldon Smith caused because of what he inflicted upon himself and what he's had to endure and what the organization has had to endure because of it. I don't think it's been just about football. I think that the weight of so many other things have gnawed away at the San Francisco 49ers. They're not the same team.
You know, even Colin Kaepernick had his off-season incident. He was completely exonerated.
Yeah.
But still, it's a distraction for him and the team.
Sure.
They've had one thing after another. Every week, it's some new incident that they have to deal with. And I think it just ate away at their psyche.
You mentioned them being undisciplined. They had 9 penalties yesterday for 107 yards. Again, very uncharacteristic of the 49ers.
I commute from Schenectady to Manhattan. It's about a 6-hour round trip. But it's cool. My family loves Schenectady, and I love books on tape. It's a lot of time to spend driving alone. On the other hand, Schenectady is really close to the highway, so...
Life is a long drive. Make sure your car is along for the ride. Mobile Super Motor Oil is formulated to help prevent sludge and protect against wear. Mobile Super, for long engine life.
I think Russell Wilson's an underrated quarterback.
Oh, yeah. He's the best quarterback we played so far. I don't know why they keep saying Andrew Luck's better than him. He's not better than Russell Wilson.
That was cornerback Chris Harris after the Seahawks' 26-20 overtime victory against the Broncos last night. You may remember that Wilson was a third-round pick in 2012, while Luck was the #1 pick in that same draft. However, Russell Wilson now has 7 wins with no losses against fellow Super Bowl winners Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Tom Brady. Here to make sense of it all, one of my favorites, our shutdown corner, Eric Allen, also NFL analyst.
Yep.
So, do you agree with Chris Harris?
No. He's a good quarterback. There's a lot to work with, of course, and his team is built differently than all the other top quarterbacks, basically. Yeah. But when you start to look at if you're going to build a team around a guy, first you want the measurable things, obviously, the height, the size, arm strength, and all that. And he doesn't come close as far as height. He doesn't come close to Andrew Luck and some of the other guys as far as the size and the durability issues and things like that, later on in his career he's going to have to prove that he can be durable. And he's been durable at this point. But the accuracy, the things that you need to be a fantastic quarterback, that size, that pocket presence, and the way that Andrew Luck goes about it without the great defense, the outstanding running game, the coach's philosophy that Pete Carroll's had. I'm not going to say he's better than Andrew Luck at this point in his career right now, although I love him. And he did an outstanding job yesterday driving his team down at the end of the ball game. You just have to understand wins and losses are the most important in this game, as we all know, and he has more of those than any of the young guys. He has a Super Bowl ring. None of the young guys have it. But it's because his team is built a little bit differently than some of the young quarterbacks and honestly some of the older quarterbacks. Right. You know, when you look at Peyton Manning right now, this is the first year he really had that kind of defense that the Seattle Seahawks have. You look at Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers nowhere near the kind of surrounding cast that they have up there in Seattle. Tom Brady, issues right now with the red zone, offensive line issues. So none of these issues that we talk about when we talk about quarterbacks, you know, outside, he doesn't have those problems. He has a great run game. He has an outstanding coaching staff and defense, one of the best in the league. So that's why he's winning a lot of these games, but he's on his way to becoming a very, very good quarterback.
Stephen A.
I think it was a ridiculous question because of a ridiculous assertion by a cornerback in Denver that wanted to add credence to the moral victory thing that I brought up at the beginning of the show. He actually made my argument he just evaporated my whole argument, Skip, because it's that kind of nonsensical rhetoric that came out of his mouth that just disgusts me because it just ruined my argument. It's one thing for me to sit up there and talk about moral victories, but now he ruined my argument by really adopting it himself. Oh, look who we went against. Look what we almost did. And you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to leave that to people like me. I can't believe Chris Harris said that. Andrew Luck. Russell Wilson is not better than Andrew Luck. Russell Wilson is incredibly gifted. He's incredibly poised. I'm very impressed with him. He gets better by the week. There is no question. He's a Super Bowl champion, etc. But last time I checked, Andrew Luck had Amar Bradshaw and Trent Richardson back then. They didn't have beast mode Marshawn Lynch.
That's right.
Last time I checked, Seattle had an offensive line. Indianapolis doesn't have much of one. Last time I checked, Russell Wilson had that elite defense, covering him when he wasn't so great, when he wasn't so accurate, when the offense didn't seem so prolific like they looked in the Super Bowl. But he had that defense, and he had beast mode covering him. One on defense and one in the backfield, okay? Andrew Luck hasn't had that. Right. Andrew Luck hasn't had that defense. Andrew Luck hasn't had that running game. Andrew Luck hasn't had that offensive line. Plus, he was succeeding Peyton Manning and still 2 consecutive 11-5 seasons with the franchise placed on his back. Russell Wilson is gifted. Not taking anything away from him. But he is no Andrew Luck. Put him on Indy and watch what happens. And put Andrew Luck on Seattle.
And I think you are being completely unfair to Chris Harris. I think Chris Harris spoke from his heart. I think because they had just stood out there for 13 straight plays while this little man picked them to pieces, he was saying, hey, what's the big deal about Andrew Luck? And I keep asking the same question on this show because all I know is that in last year's playoffs, while one quarterback was actually leading a team to the Super Bowl, and I know he's got beast mode in the defense, the other quarterback was throwing 7 interceptions in 2 games. He was throwing his team with 3 interceptions into a very deep hole that he helped throw them back out of against Kansas City at home. And then he went up to Foxborough and threw 4 more interceptions. Well, Russell Wilson wasn't doing that. and I got to tell you, I'm eating a little crow on this one because I'm usually pretty good at who can play coming out of college. And I watched Russell Wilson quite a bit at North Carolina State, and I watched him a whole lot at Wisconsin. I didn't see this. I didn't see it. He's 5'11", barely. And I thought, he's just going to have a hard time. I underrated his acceleration out of the pocket. He just runs away from people out of the pocket. He makes everybody else look like they're in slow motion. And I underrated his self-preservation radar. It's extreme. He knows when to get down. I don't see him get tagged.
That's awesome, but you know what else you underrated? The coaching philosophy.
Okay, that's fine.
Pete Carroll. And I think that has a huge deal. And again, the relationship between Pete Carroll and these guys that he's been able to recruit and be in their home. So he knows them. He knows kind of how they tick. And I think that the Seattle Seahawks have an outstanding opportunity at this point because they're not paying the quarterback a big deal to keep that defense really tight and understand that Marshawn Lynch is one of the most competitive individuals on the earth, and that team is focused on the running game and defense, and they have a fine quarterback to be able to kind of handle it all. But once those pieces, because he's going to get paid pretty soon, and once those pieces start to kind of diminish, we'll see and find out what kind of quarterback he really is, and can he handle being the best player maybe on that team.
Did you see what Russell Wilson said after the game about, I don't want this to come out wrong, but I was hoping that it's kind of a shot at the defense, like, I don't wish that on the defense, but I want the ball. I want the ball, and I want a chance to go down there and score. Wow, so he was kind of hoping for overtime, hoping they win the toss, hoping he gets the ball so he could go 80 yards in 13 plays. He does not make many explosive plays. The longest pass on that drive, the last drive, was 12 yards to Curse. Okay, he's a little man who makes lots of little big plays. Am I right? And he just keeps on keeping on. And he ran for a couple of first downs on 3rd down. It's impressive.
Everyone on that team, from Russell Wilson to player 53, is built that way. And that's what I'm saying. That everyone on offense wanted that opportunity, I imagine, because that's how Pete drafts you. That's how Pete recruits you.
But it's one thing to be the backup cornerback, and it's another thing to be the quarterback. You know, right? In that situation, that was big guts yesterday. That was a big stage game to come right on top and cancel out a masterpiece drive by Peyton Manning with yours. That's incredible to me.
It really is.
And so, bottom line, Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson. Who's played better in pro football? Who's just played? Who's performed better?
So
I don't think it's even close.
That's not fair.
It's wins and
That's
losses.
not fair.
Oh, come on.
That's
you have to
not fair.
switch teams, basically.
That's not fair.
So if you switch teams, you don't think Andrew Luck has the same success or more?
I don't know. I just don't know.
I think so.
I think so.
Stephen A., why is that
I'm not
fair?
sure.
Why is that not fair?
Andrew, of course it's not fair because it's not the same team. Seattle's defense last year was one of the elite teams we've seen in NFL history. Yeah. Right now, we're talking about them going up against the great Peyton Manning and neutralizing them to 3 points, coming off their 43-8 drubbing in the Super Bowl, limiting them to 3 points in 3.5 quarters, holding the Denver Broncos in the Peyton Manning era. Only the second time Peyton Manning hasn't scored a touchdown in the first half since he's arrived in Denver. You look at the Indianapolis Colts and the kind of team that Andrew Luck has. No. You know it does not compare to Seattle.
You know what?
You know that.
You know what?
You know
I
that.
don't
it's
know
not
that.
even in the same ballpark.
I'm serious about this.
Yeah,
we got to be more fair to this kid, Russell Wilson.
So we're not saying he's garbage.
Wait a second. Does anybody remember? I know most of the focus in the Super Bowl was on how bad Peyton was. Do you remember how great Russell Wilson was? Do you remember the rifle shots that he threw to break that game open? I mean, he threw some passes where you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Skip, I'm not saying the guy.
Wait a minute.
I'm not saying he's bad.
Eric, hold on.
Eric,
hold on.
All right.
My issue is that Skip does this all the time, man.
You can't
sit here and dissect the game. Listen, you don't even know what I'm about to say. Wait a minute. You sit here all the time and you dissect teams better than most aficionados. You talk about a running game. You talk about an offensive line. You talk about a defense. You talk about the impact that they have. And then it comes to Andrew Luck, and you ignore all of that because you want to elevate Russell Wilson. We know Russell Wilson could play. He's a champion, for crying out loud. But at the same time, look at who he has. You trying to tell me that if Andrew Luck didn't have Marshawn Lynch in the backfield, that wouldn't help him? That if he didn't have that if the Indianapolis Colts had a defense like Seattle's, that would not help him? Come on now. You can't ignore that. You can't ignore that.
I mean, we're doing this year versus last year, but who has the better receiving core right now? No Golden Tate in Seattle?
What are you talking about? Who has the better receiving core?
Andrew Luck does.
Time out. Wait a minute. Reggie Wayne is coming off the ACL. Hakeem Nicks was a no-show last year because he was coming off of his injury and trying to get himself reacclimated. What are you talking about? Some people will look at Indianapolis and say their receivers are suspect.
He's young, pretty good ball player.
Yeah, I think he's explosive.
Yeah. If we're talking receiving core from the beginning of last year when everyone was healthy on Indianapolis Colts, it was probably a better receiving core. But right now, Reggie Wayne is really dealing with the ACL, and there's no way you're going to tell me Reggie Wayne at this point in his career after a ACL injury is at the top of his game at points. I watched him early in the season. He's not coming on his breaks properly because he's still nursing that ACL. It takes you a full year to be able to come back from an ACL. He's not that explosive at this point right now.
Percy Harvin, Lockett, Baldwin, these dudes are no scrubs.
Wait a second. I'm going to bring up what I brought up earlier in the show. 4 times in a fourth quarter drive yesterday, they targeted Brian Walters, undrafted free agent out of Cornell, the punt returner. They threw passes to him.
Because he wasn't being covered.
Wow, really? Oh, wow, that's an explosive group of receivers you got.
Please.
They're
you just hating on Andrew Luck. That's all. You just hating on Andrew Luck.
Brian Walters?
I mentioned the other 3. You ignored them.
I'm being totally fair.
Well, again,
come on. You guys are being Andrew Luck. That's all you're doing.
The guy is outstanding.
This
He's
sounds
not
like
better than Andrew
classic little game manager. He's a little game manager.
I've never said that.
All right.
Yeah, well, you're implying.
Can you hang out or no?
I'm here.
Another cornerback speaking out yesterday. The Eagles' Kerry Williams. He complained after their 37-34 victory over Washington that Chip Kelly's tough practices are to blame for the Eagles' slow starts this season. Here's what he had to say. It's hard to go out there and fight for 60 minutes when you're fighting throughout the week to make it through one practice. I'm not the only one. I'm just the only one that's man enough to stand up here and talk to y'all. It's obviously, in my opinion, an issue in our starts. We've got to start taking care of our guys throughout the week in order for us to be productive and have more energy on Sundays. You got to be smart as a coaching staff and as players. Chip Kelly didn't respond yesterday, but he did this morning, and he disagreed. Let's listen.
Kerry actually didn't really practice last week, so he was limited. He missed Wednesday and Thursday. We're practicing the same way we've always practiced, and I believe we're the freshest team in the fourth quarter. I think that if you look at what we're doing in the fourth quarter of games, I thought our defense came up huge. I thought the way our whole team played in the fourth quarter obviously shows the type of conditioning that we have.
For the first time this season, the Eagles actually led at halftime. They are now 3-0, atop of the NFC East. Joining us now, or hanging out with us still, is Eric Allen. Why are you laughing?
Because you can't go out there and talk about practice, and you're not practicing. Practice.
Is this practice? We can't talk about it? I love how his response was he actually didn't practice.
Right.
Do you think his comments are a big deal or no big deal?
Oh, I think it's a big deal for him, obviously. But for the Eagles and what they're doing, it's no big deal. Because if we go back to last season, the last 11 games, regular season, they won 10. So the proof is in the pudding. Okay, they're winning ball games because they're in better shape at the end of the game. Now, Chip brought this kind of sports science from Oregon, where he had a limited time to deal with his athletes, but they ran fast. They won a lot of games. He won a lot of Pac-12 championships. His team was in the college championship. So he's won wherever he's been with this method. And he's went the sports conditioning way. He's hired a guy who used to train the SEALs, the Olympics, and all that stuff. So he's working with proven results off the field and on the field. And in this sports science, they have periods where you have to rest and you have to sleep. I think the big deal is some of the guys who've been in the league a little bit are not used to on Saturdays, instead of having a walkthrough, going full speed. Because he's done the research saying, you know, when you're dealing with Olympic athletes, you know, they don't go in sleep mode before a huge race. They get a great workout. So they're lathered up, they're sweating. So then when they go in performance, they're at their top. And that's kind of what he's taking and basing kind of his team on, is Olympics and of course, the Navy SEALs, who are in outstanding condition and, you know, have to do far worse things than we do on the football field. So he's taking all of that and bringing that to the Eagles, and some guys are just not with it who are used to the old ways. But again, just like technology.
Do you believe the reason for their slow starts?
Well, I think the reason for the slow starts may be because offensively right now, offensive line-wise, they have some issues. Last year, they had all 5 guys playing. This year, guys are banged up, got on suspension. Their center, who's done an outstanding job, he went out in the game late. So again, last year, health-wise, they had everyone play. This year, they're already struggling. So I think that's really the issue as far as why they're getting started a little late. And then defensively, it's still having struggles defensively. Defensively, they haven't caught up to the offensive tempo and how to get it done. So again, there's other reasons, because right now, sports science-wise, I think they're on the cutting edge and they're not going backwards.
All right. Stephen A., big deal or no big deal what Kerry Williams had to say?
Well, it's a big deal because I think that Kerry Williams doesn't want to be in Philadelphia any longer, and he simply hasn't said so. He's going a roundabout way of doing so, because you can't want to be in Philadelphia when you make the kind of claims that he's made, considering the level of success that they've enjoyed. You're talking about a team that had lost 12 of their last 13 games in the Andy Reid era. This dude takes over. He's the head coach. And now in your last 11 regular season games, you've won 10. And you are going to complain? And what are you complaining about? Practice, man. We're talking about practice. And, oh, by the way, you haven't been practicing? I mean, I don't understand that. I mean, if you have off the last Tuesday and Wednesday, how do you make those claims? Now, you can look at Kerry Williams. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's a veteran in this league. So nobody would sit there or should sit there and summarily dismiss what he's saying as if he doesn't know what he's talking about. He may have a point, and indeed, he may be telling the truth when he said that other dudes in the locker room feel that way. He's just the one man enough to say it. But essentially, by him saying what he said, not only did he throw them under the bus because he's raised the eyebrow towards the coaching staff as to who else feels the way that he feels, but he didn't have the professionalism, the professional decorum and decency to go to his coach and to have a conversation about it. I'm not saying I know that definitively, but if it caught Chip Kelly by surprise, which it appeared to, then clearly it appeared to be a conversation that he hadn't had with Kerry Williams. And so for me, when you're a veteran, you're supposed to know better than those things. And if I'm wrong about him having a conversation actually with Chip Kelly, then I stand corrected because I don't know that definitively. But what I will say is that there's certain things that you don't do, especially when you're undefeated at 3-0. And that's what Kerry Williams did. To me, I think that he's going to end up out the door. Maybe not this year, but at the end of this season, I don't know if he'll be back after this. Because if you're Chip Kelly, why do you need this?
I agree with your final statement. I don't agree with the path you took to get there. I do think this is a big deal, even though Kerry Williams, as we all know, can be a malcontent, but I'm not going to dismiss these quotes as typical Kerry Williams sort of loser kind of quotes, even though it was sore loser, or sore winner, I should say, because they'd just gone to 3-0. I think he took that stage as a team leader to make what he considers a significant statement about the way this team keeps overcoming, the first team in NFL history to overcome 10-point deficits to get to 3-0. And, you can look at it upside down. It's very possible that Kerry Williams exaggerated injuries so he didn't have to practice on whichever days it was,
he said Tuesday, Wednesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, or was it Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it was. And I think he's suggesting that some other of his teammates are going into games trying to, quote-unquote, save themselves in the first half, not go all out because they're afraid they're not going to have the legs for the third and fourth quarter. Is that preposterous? I don't know. But I will bet you there are other veteran players in that locker room that he thinks he's speaking for. Now, I know Chip Kelly. He's not going to like this. This is a clean house kind of a quote where Stephen A. is right. Yeah. It could be the first indication we have that Kerry Williams is on his way out.
Or wants to be out.
Or maybe he wants to be out. But again, remember, he's basically saying, I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but he's saying, in Baltimore, I won a Super Bowl doing it the conventional way, which was the way you did it, which was you gear way down on Friday, and then you just walk on Saturday. You don't do anything on Saturday. It's the way everybody else has done it. And here comes this college coach from Oregon saying, I'm going to revolutionize the way you guys are doing business in the National Football League. And Kerry Williams is saying, hey, would somebody listen to me, please? Because this ain't working. That's why we keep falling into holes in the first half. Is that true, or is he just making an excuse? I don't know, but I don't think it's a little deal that he's making here.
Well, again, if the
not
team was not...
It's not a little deal, but Eric, let me ask you this question. Excuse me for interjecting. I got to ask you this. How is it that you're losing steam to start off the game, but you're gaining it in the second half to win the game?
Well, again, I go back to, I think this team is well prepared physically, and I think there should be no questions about that, the tempo that they go with. Again, I think defensively, there are issues defensively with the Eagles, and have been so for the last 3 or 4 years. And I think with this high-paced offense, it continues to really show holes in that defense, particularly in the secondary. Because once the Eagles get up, it's about throwing the ball, trying to catch up, and there are some holes on the back end. We don't have that great Trent Cole pass rush anymore consistently.
That's true.
Linebacker core has been banged up a little bit, and they're a little bit small. So there's a lot of issues defensively, and I think the pace of the offense allow those deficiencies to be glaring holes, and that's why you get down early. Never really have they stopped the run the last 2 or 3 years. So that's an issue too.
But Kerry could have some validity in what he's saying.
Well, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, but you're never going to go. You're never going to go backwards. Now that you have so much success with this, and again, going back to the 11 regular season game, winning 10 ball games and 3-0 at this point, being able to come back and still have that kind of, ferocious attack offensively. And you see the other defense, hands on hips, they're able to make those plays in the back end. And I know receivers and skill guys are all about it.
Yeah. But the Eagles did give up, 511 yards? That's not a pretty sight.
Right, at all.
We forgot to mention that we want to thank Sports Radio 94 WIP in Philadelphia for that Chip Kelly sound. The Eagles are obviously leading the NFC East. They are one of 3 teams that remain undefeated. Skip's Cowboys are behind them at 2-1. And I don't know if you know about this. Eli Manning, he threw for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns, and the Giants win on Sunday. Congratulations. But the Redskins and the Giants, again, still at the bottom of the division. Take a look at that, folks. Eric Allen's still hanging out with us.
I'm always happy.
I know. Which is the best team in the NFC East?
Well, Eagles 3-0 right now. But again, defensive issues, and now Kerry's talking about the conditioning issue. I think they're the best in the East at this point. but the Cowboys are coming on strong. And here's what I tell you, and it pains me.
I was going to say,
it pains me a little bit.
The Bird's going to be mad at you.
Yeah, I know. But again, I look at running the football with DeMarco Murray has been outstanding for this football team. And I think finally they understand that he is the guy. If they're going to go to where they need to go, he needs to continue to be that guy. They have outstanding weapons on the outside. And Dez Bryant, 88, just phenomenal, uncoverable at times. Tony Romo, the back issues maybe have caused him to say, wait, hold it. Let me make sure that I can dump the ball down a little bit, and when I scramble, slide, get out of trouble. So again, like you say, that radar has went up. And then what I look for defensive, they're 22nd in defense right now, which is not good. But that means they're second in the NFC in defense because everyone else plays terrible defense. Washington's playing pretty good. But what I look at defensively is not so much where you are, but turnovers, where you are turnovers. Right now they have 4 interceptions. If you get 21 to 24 picks on the season, you're going to be pretty good. That means that turnover ratio is going to be pretty high, and you can win a Super Bowl with a high turnover ratio, as we know New Orleans Saints did that a couple years ago. So if you can get somewhere in the teens in defense and your turnover ratio is plus 10 and you got, 24, 25 picks, you're going to be a pretty good ball club, okay? So I think right now Dallas Cowboy has amped it up a little bit, and they're right close to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're really close to the Eagles.
Close. So he gave you some of his Kool-Aid.
Whoa.
You're drinking it.
I drank it up.
Stephen A. Smith, are you listening?
I'm drinking up.
Oh, goodness.
Are y'all finished with y'all little party?
Let's go.
Over the next 6 weeks, did you know that the Dallas Cowboys have New Orleans coming up next Sunday? They got Houston after that at home, which should be a win. They got a road game in Seattle on October 12th. They got 2 back-to-back division games against the Giants and Washington. They'll lose one of them.
Nope.
And they got Arizona. November 2nd. I'm looking at over the next 6 weeks, Dallas has 4 potential losses as far as I'm concerned. So the way I look at it, can we pump the brakes just a little bit here? The Dallas Cowboys have absolutely looked impressive in their comeback victory over the St. Louis Rams with a 3rd-string quarterback. They absolutely looked impressive against the Tennessee Titans with Jake Locker as a quarterback. I am so impressed. I must admit to you, the Dallas Cowboys have exceeded my wildest expectations. Wow. I am so impressed with the Dallas Cowboys. Can we pump the brakes and let's see what they do against some real competition?
My Dallas Cowboys are facing 1 potential loss over the next 6 weeks. 1 potential loss at Seattle.
I agree with you.
Thank you very much.
I agree with you right there.
What I loved about yesterday was 21-0 deficit, and they showed me some backbone that this team has not had over the last 5 years since 2009 when the last time they went to the playoffs. And I loved it that you pointed out they now have a legit 4-quarter commitment to hammering the football with DeMarco, as long as he doesn't turn into defumble Murray early in the game. We've got to eliminate that, because that's 3 straight games he said, here, we'll let you guys score first. Okay? No good. But behind the bulldozer offensive line that is developing there. They're young, but this is an extremely talented group. And with all the injuries in Philly now, as you pointed out earlier, they're starting to have to mix and match a little bit. So far, so great for the Dallas offensive line, which is helping Romo because he's handing the ball off a lot. They're not asking him to go win the game by throwing 48 passes. Right. And yet, yesterday, when it was time early in the 4th quarter, Romo looked pretty good. Yeah. He made some big-time plays. He made a big-time scramble on 3rd and 13, and then he made a big-time throw on 3rd and 16 to Terrence Williams. Those are game savers or game makers in this case. And as we know, the commitment to run can be the antidote for a high-flying Chip Kelly offense. Because the reason they were somewhat successful, they're really successful at Philly last year. They won 17-3. because they just kept the ball away from Nick Foles' offense.
That's right.
And at Dallas in the last game with Kyle Orton at quarterback, they hung in with the Eagles until the last drive when Kyle Orton, maybe predictably, finally threw it to Philadelphia. But the point was they played them close twice. They won the first one fairly easily, and then they hung in. So I'm still liking Dallas. I'm still going slight edge to Dallas Cowboys. Now, I know they got a big, tough game, but it's a little bit of a revenge game against a Drew Brees and company who last year in New Orleans set an NFL record with 40 first downs. Remember that game?
Yeah.
Remember we were on Veterans Day the day after?
It was really sad.
You
were done with them. You stopped
Yeah.
liking them at that
That's
moment.
not the same team that they're going to face. The Saints team, again, struggling right now. Defensively with Rob Ryan, struggling. Running game struggling, and Dallas, I think Rod Marinelli is a perfect guy for that defensive system. He's able to kind of merge, making more plays in the back end. I think it's critical that these guys feel like they're confident on the back end because they've been getting so much guff because they've been giving up big plays. They have the 4 interceptions to this point, not even at the quarter mark at this point right now. Leads me to believe that they're going to continue to be solid, and that's going to be huge for this football team.
And remember, one last point yesterday, they have discovered a godsend at the linebacker position in Rolando McClain, who was once the 8th pick in the draft, who's had his issues. He couldn't go yesterday with the groin pull. Will he be okay for next Sunday night against Drew Brees? Well, he'd been the best player on defense, and they won without him yesterday. I'd say that's pretty impressive.
It is.
All right, so you.
Well, I hope that he is ready to go. I hope he is ready to go because the way you sound, it's like he's going to make all the difference in the world. I mean, they're going to be a world of difference when he's on the field with them. The Dallas Cowboys are going to be a top 5 defensive unit. I mean, let's make sure McClain gets back here, Skip Bayless.
I did not say that.
And that's how it sounds. Please. Unbelievable.
Well, before the year,
St.
you were the one saying they were going to be historically bad on defense, right?
Bravo. The defense, yes, that's right. And so did you. So did you.
No, I picked
Don't
them to win the
leave
East.
me out there hanging. You were saying that about them too.
Historically bad. I kept saying Rod
because of their
Marinelli will
offense.
make them better.
Play the
because
tape,
of their
kids.
offense.
Play the tape. Okay,
You said that because of their offense.
Eric Allen, the Cowboys are coming.
They're coming. Philly better be ready.
So you think they'll win the division?
They better be ready.
You think they'll win the division?
Philly better be ready.
So you're not ready to say that?
Cowboys are coming.
I can't get you to say that.
They're coming for you, Stephen A. Smith.
I got to go to Philly in a couple weeks.
Coming for you.
Coming to my crib. Coming to my crib to watch the playoffs with me. That's where they come.
What do you
That's
say?
where they get.
Did you say the
coming
only?
to South Jersey to watch the playoffs
You said something
with me.
about the only way they can get to the playoffs if they buy a ticket. No, that wasn't him. That was Jadakiss. That was
Jadakiss.
My bad.
That's wrong.
I didn't use that line, but that's how I feel.
All right. Eric Allen, thank you for hanging out with us. We appreciate it.
Anytime.
It is time for our final takes. It's rapid fire Q&A with the trio. Up first, yesterday, the Browns ran a very clever trick play for one Johnny Manziel against the Ravens. Manziel caught a 39-yard pass from Hoyer, but it was wiped out by a penalty. Your reaction to the play, Bayless?
Stephen A., it just made me sick to watch this. It should be beneath Johnny Manziel's dignity to be relegated to being some gimmick on a trick play that wasn't even a football play, that is actually against the rules and should have been flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct. It's one thing to trick somebody with a flea flicker or some kind of reverse pass. It's another to try to hide out Johnny Manziel on the sideline and then have him not step over the line and take off on a pass pattern. I mean, it's just awful. I know he's being a good soldier to go along with it, but it doesn't sit well with me.
Didn't sit well with me either, Skip Bayless. I'm thinking in the world of professional football, you should be above trying something like this. It speaks of desperation as far as I'm concerned. Johnny Football should have had nothing to that. Kyle Shanahan should have had nothing to do with that. I was very, very disappointed to see something like that. It made me actually lose respect for those guys just a little bit in terms of the offensive coordinator his willingness to try something like that. It's almost like getting into the ring and then wait until somebody turns their back to try and sucker punch them for crying out loud.
That is correct.
Just be straight up and perform. May the best man win.
On another trick play yesterday, Andy Dalton caught the first touchdown pass of his career. Bayless, take a look.
Yeah.
What was your reaction?
My reaction was, what was that kid thinking? That kid's a third-round draft pick from the University of Connecticut, Stephen A., in his second year. And He should have picked the ball off and ran it back because nobody was over on that side of the field. I don't know if he was just paying respect because it was a quarterback and he felt like he couldn't touch him. He didn't need to deck Andy Dalton. He just needed to pick off the ball and run it the other way. That was a 3-0 game at that point in favor of the home team. It could have quickly been 7-3 in favor of the visiting team, Tennessee. And that kid's going to hear about that all week, if not for the rest of his career.
Yeah, that was bad. That was a bad play on his part. He seemed in over his head to make that kind of mistake, not seeing that you had no help on the field. Easily could have gone for the interception and for some reason laid off of it. I don't know whether it was because of Andy Dalton or whatever, but he clearly dropped the ball in that regard. You expect more from a professional football player. He didn't look like he belonged in the NFL on that particular play.
Both of you picked the Patriots to go to the Super Bowl this year, but I can't finish. It hasn't been an easy start for one Patriot. The Patriots. Tom Brady has yet to throw for over 250 yards despite winning yesterday. Belichick says they have some work to do. How concerned are you, Bayless?
Stephen A., I'm very concerned. That team got booed in the first quarter at home yesterday. Tom Brady not looking like Tom Brady. Offensive line is patchwork at best. They can't run block. They can barely pass block. Brady got rocked about 6 times, sacked twice, but got hit 6 good times yesterday. I don't know what's going on with Aaron Dobson. He was a healthy scratch. Kenbrell Tompkins, no-show. Amendola had 1 target. He did catch 1 ball that got nullified by penalty. But I don't know. It's become Julian Edelman or bust on the offense because they can't run it. They average 2.4 yards a carry. I'm not seeing the Patriots I thought I would see, at least on offense.
Neither am I, but it just tells me that life without Logan Mankins just isn't the same. I mean, the offensive line, you just look at them. They just don't seem as thorough as they have in the past. Obviously, Wilfork and those boys out there, they're doing their job on defense. But offensively, Tom Brady and the New England Patriots just seem to be a shell of themselves right now. I think they'll get it together. I'm not going to panic because it is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick that we're talking about here. But I definitely expected more than I'm seeing.
The Steelers got their 5th straight win against the Panthers on Sunday. LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell both rushed for more than 100 yards, but the Steelers' defense lost 3 of their starters in that win. What's your reaction to that, Skip?
My first reaction last night was, Stephen A., I think we both picked Carolina, and I realized once again, you can never write off or count out Ben Roethlisberger, who made some plays last night, some throws that were just unbelievable. They ran the heck out of the ball. I think you also can't trust this Carolina defense to be as stout as it was last year. I think they missed Greg Hardy last night. They couldn't get much pressure. And in the end, Pittsburgh, with so many starters down, poor Ike Taylor.
He broke his arm, right?
Looks like he's gone for the year. I know you've had your issues with him, but still, Pittsburgh.
I didn't wish that on him.
No, I didn't either. Boy, they gutted out a big win last night.
Yeah, there's no question about it. It's going to be a tough loss for them. Mike Tomlin and those boys are going to have to Dick LeBeau. They're going to have to figure it out. But I think one of the ways they can do it is by running the football as effectively as they ran it last night with Bell, with Blount. If they continue to do that, that'll spell for the defense to some degree anyway.
Quickly, Stephen A. Jets, Bears, who wins?
I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears. I think Chicago Bears are going to win the game tonight.
I'm not trusting Jay Cutler anymore.